On this video, I'm going to share with you something about a philosophy that's not only in our tradition, but you'll find it also in other traditions around the world. So obviously, I'm going to be speaking based on our tradition and the viewpoints that we have as a reference point, and you can go and analyze how it applies to other traditions on your own. So first of all, it's going to be on the realms, and for us, the realms are a model of cosmology. And what we mean by that is that it's a model that is meant to give us understanding about how things come into existence, where it came from, what is it connected to, how does it work, so on and so forth. All right. So as we get into it, so here it's defining the process of creation. So that's important because when you're looking into any type of spiritual or metaphysical or mystical tradition, one of the things that you'll see is there's always some kind of a cosmology, some form that takes place in terms of how something comes to existence. There is an underlying process that we learn in that. And that process is important because once we understand the mechanism of how it works, we can begin to take up the practices to be a active participant in the process itself. So this is what gives us the context for a lot of the practices, a lot of the other things that we study. So whatever that might be, a good example is many forms of different types of magic as well as alchemy are all heavily relying on a good understanding of the model that any particular tradition has as far as its cosmology and how things come into existence. So it also helps us to define where the different types of entities sit within the system. And in our system, everything is clearly defined, what type of entity is corresponding to what realm and what that means. It tells you a lot about the characteristics of the entities that you're going to be working with. Right. So in total, we are looking at four realms. And so the four realms here are they're not a place, right? Although they're more like a state. So it really starts off with spirit, then it goes heaven, earth, and creation. And in our tradition, this process is very, very important to understand because there's a as above, so below. You have the law of correspondences, you have self-similarity, fractalism, however it is that you want to define it, there's the understanding that there's an overall pattern that replicates. So this model represents the large scale that is reflected also within us, but also in virtually every interaction that we see around us. So once we're able to understand it, once we're able to see it, it's hard to unsee. All right, so the first realm is the realm of the unmanifest cause. It's the realm of spirit. Okay, so this we typically refer to as source. It's unmanifest. There are no things there. All right, so we're going to look more into this. All right, so as I said, there's no things that are there. There's no identities, there's no entities. There's simply consciousness, the state of awareness. Okay, there's qualities of it, right? In the same way that consciousness has certain qualities, but there's no actual things. So this realm has an influence over all of the other realms. It's not influenced by any of the other realms. So this one has the most dominant influence over the all four realms that we look at within our tradition. Because it is not manifest and because it is connected to all pervading, all penetrating, it does have the ability to produce what we would call miracles. Now, the miracles that we're referring to are simply an unexpected change that is outside the course of a natural course of action, right? And so this source, this spirit, the realm of the unmanifest cause, it's inherently neutral, right? So this is where in certain traditions, it gets a little bit muddied when it gets into a religious perspective. From our perspective and how we view this realm, it's not a matter of preference. There's no human-like quality here. There's no like or dislike. There's no preference or aversion towards any type of person, agenda, or anything like that. It's inherently neutral. Okay, so the idea here is that in the same way that in the ocean, you have people who will sail, they will surf, they will swim, and they'll enjoy themselves. They'll have a great time. Dolphins swim very, very gracefully in the ocean, and they have no problem. It's where they live. But the ocean cares no more for the dolphin than the hundreds of thousands of people that drown over whatever course of time that it takes. There's no like or dislike there. The ocean is however the ocean is. And so the source or the realm of spirit is like this as well. It has no real preference. The only way that it allows all the rest of creation to to have the ability to manifest in all its infinite possibilities, and for existence to have the opportunity to co-create and to become an active participant in the process, is that it's based on a mechanism of how it works. It's a system of how it works, and we can either consciously take part of that or unconsciously have to deal with the consequences of whatever that might be, right? And that's what allows for anything to take place. And that brings us back to the idea of producing miracles. Now, the thing is let's say if we were to take a mathematical, right? So a completely different approach, a mathematical approach to finding to a certain equation, or, right, a certain answer. You can virtually get to any answer from any place. Now, how you arrive there may be far more direct and simple in some cases, or much more complex in others, but you still arrive at an answer. And so this is the same thing here. The fact that that's true in mathematics just indicates that it takes either less or more of a process to get from one state to another state. And understanding the how that takes place is really the work of the mysteries, so that we can understand how to take ourselves from whatever state that we're in into progressive steps, one after the other, towards there's many benchmarks along the way, but I won't list here what a supposed end goal is, because that's not something that's relevant for conversation, because no matter what you say now, different revelations that you'll have may turn the needle a little bit, and you may change your mind as to what you think an end goal may be, until you realize that there is no end to infinity. So, all right, so moving on. So the thing with the realm, so the spirit realm, is you see here, if you were to look at the circle itself as the entirety of the spirit realm, everything else is within it. Okay, so if we have what in this diagram originates from some Taoist text, and here translated as the upper, lower, and middle realms. The three of them are parts of a greater whole. That whole is what we're referring to as the realm of spirit. All right. Yeah, so as we go through, you'll also understand what is within. So something to consider is that these realms, if we were to consider this as a location, as a place, the place is not the same as what lives in the place, right? So, and then here for spirit or source, the realms themselves are parts of, right? So I wouldn't consider uh, my heart less or more of me than my legs, right? They're all a part of my body. One aspect is internal and you don't see it. The other aspect is external and you do see it. But it doesn't make any, also my digestive system, right? So it has a function, it serves a purpose, and it's doing something. And it produces what you see, which is my overall state of health and well-being, as well as, a number of things. But that that's kind of how we start to see parallels, right? But either way, the realm of spirit here we see as the whole, everything else is a part. Um, Now, in the same way that all of the parts cannot exist separate from the whole, it also means that the whole can be found in any and all of its parts. So you have two major views on the theistic view, right? Well, you have well, I shouldn't say two. You have monotheistic, polytheistic, pantheistic, and panentheistic. So out of those two, really looking at pantheism and panentheism. Pantheism is saying that all is divine. Panentheism is all the divine is within all things, right? So whether it's one or the other, I guess really depends on where your perspective lies. Obviously, from our perspective here in the manifest world, the we exist in one of these other realms, and we can find spirit, we can find the unmanifest cause hidden and contained within any of its parts, right? So this is why for ourselves, a lot of the practices is going internal, going within yourself, because the one thing you carry with yourself everywhere you go, any time of the day, any day of the week, any week of the year, is yourself. Right. So then that brings us to the next realm, which is the heaven realm. Right. So the heaven realm is the first. So you have heaven and earth are created together, and they're seen as a yin and yang polarities of one another. So here, the heaven realm is a realm of celestial potential, right? All right, so it's yang in principle. Now, what it means, what we mean by yang, there's qualities and all that, but it's also based on a relationship to another. Yin and yang are relationships to one another. Yang in this case, so what we have is it is emanating. It is the initiating principle. It is what activates or imposes action upon other things, right? So one example is, we could look at the cosmos in some more microcosmic perspective. We can look at the cosmos and astrology as being an aspect of the heaven realm. Now, the stars, the sun, the moon, all of these things create an influence on all life here on Earth. But here on Earth, we cannot influence the sun, the moon, the stars, right? So, in that sense, the relationship is that it is emanating its influence to all the realms below it. It is only acted upon or influenced by the spirit realm because the spirit realm is above it, right? So some of the things that are related to the realm of the heaven realm, things that are so inspiration, right? So interesting, the word inspiration implies that we connect to some kind of intelligence, right? So all of these things of the intelligence and the qualities of the mind, being inspired, are aspects that correspond. I'm not saying it is the same as, but it corresponds to the heaven realm. Okay, so then this also has the visual aspect. So when we see symbols that represent ideas, the symbols themselves, because they are visual, they are something that it's an expression of the mind, because it's an expression of an idea. It is also governed by the heaven realm. And this is also where we find the celestial deities. So depending on the tradition that you follow, it may be the many gods and goddesses that are in the celestial deities, maybe angels, it may be whatever it is that the tradition that you're familiar with. Just understand that if it's considered to come from the heavens and the heavenly planes and the heavenly realms, they're considered celestial deities, right? So see here, there's a difference. There's the heaven realm, and there's those who exist within the heaven realm. And so the heavenly deities or the celestial deities live or are connected to the celestial realm. And this also is what provides the resources for creation. And so these resources are the things that act upon or initiate the process for the rest of creation. And that brings us to Earth. All right. So Earth is the yin polarity to heaven. It's the counterpart. And now I do have to say, Earth is not necessarily referring to the planet. Yes, we live on a planet and we call it Earth, but we're talking about a principle here, not a thing. All of these are principles, not things. Right? So this is yin in principle as opposed to yang. So it's receptive. It receives of the influence that is bestowed by heaven, right? So it is a receiving. Okay, this governs things like understanding. So while while heaven is representative of an inspiration, then once we receive the inspiration and we process that information, we're able to understand its meaning, right? And so that principle, that quality is also corresponding to the realm of earth, right? So it's a realm of receiving, reception. Okay, so this is also symbolic of archetypes of form. Now, what we mean by archetypes of form here is not the actual thing, but the impression of the thing. This is also the realm of ancestors and the astral. So here, it's essentially the idea of souls, right? So it's all the souls that come into existence at every and any layer, right? So the souls, the realm itself, the astral plane, is the same in some degrees as the realm of the ancestors. It's where a lot of the deeper magical practices are actually played out. Okay, and in the same way that the earth realm processes the energies and the resources of heaven, then you see that heaven is this initiating spiritual impulse to create. And then the souls are the archetype of a form that is over spans of time meant to understand, right? To process that information and to assimilate through the life experiences, right? So this is how we start to see already how it starts to connect with an understanding of what makes up the human being and the different layers, right? But if, in this sense, when we talk about ancestors, it could be ancestors of your bloodline. They can also be lineage ancestors of a tradition. And then the astral plane. The astral plane being there's many layers to the astral plane, and there's a lot that can happen there. There's an entirely different set of laws of physics that takes place there. There's a lot that happens there that is not a possibility here in the physical plane, right? So in that, there is a direct connection to um, not only our ancestors, but ancestral information, right? So this is where we start to talk about things like the Akashic records, right? And then we get into the third of the or the last of the realms, right? So we had spirit, then heaven, then earth, and then we have creation realm. Creation realm is everything of manifestation. The character itself, it actually means great or big. In this case, it's referring to like all things. The great realm is all manifest creation, right? Okay, so here the principle is of balance, where if heaven is yang and earth is yin, you could see the realm of heaven and the realm of earth as having these masculine and feminine properties. And then creation is this, it's based on the principle of balance. So we start to see that in the way we live our life. We see that in the way nature sustains itself. There is a balancing act, not only of the elements, but also the rising and the falling of the seasons and the temperature and the movement of the celestial bodies and how that creates rhythms. All of this is a process of managing managing balance, right? So you have a lot of different things that exist within the manifest realm of creation. This also governs experience, right? So if heaven is the inspiration and earth is the understanding, the creation realm is the experience of it itself, right? It's the living out of things. Okay, so so again, it's all manifestation of form. So the important thing here is that we see form as an end product, but there is nothing that exists in this realm that is always remaining. Everything is constantly changing from one state into another state. That's the nature of the creation realm. So if in the realm of spirit it is completely unmanifest and having infinite potential, then the creation realm is the manifestation of that infinite potential, meaning that in order to experience itself in infinite potential, it is constantly changing, right? So we see that in just a microcosm as far as our immediate nature, the seasons and the cycles of the change. So as you can tell already, so we have the different realms, we have the way that the realms work with each other, but we're already beginning to see that there's other patterns that exist within the realm, right? And I'll leave that for another video, but for now, just understand that there's a process to move not only from one phase to another within a realm, but also how to access the others. Okay, so it's the end result of the process of creation, as I was saying. All right, so let's look at the three of them side by side, a comparative analysis of what they represent. Right. So remember, all of this is taking place within the realm of spirit, and the spirit is within all three. Right. So first here, you can look at things like future related to heaven. As a matter of fact, when you start to look at a lot of different traditions and when they speak of prophecy and its relation to visiting heaven or being shown in the heavens, being shown a prophecy is of the future. Then you have the past for Earth. Again, you look at the Akashic records, past life memory, and things like that that you hear more often these days in the spiritual circles, the common spiritual circles. Understand that that's an earth realm quality. And then the creation realm is present. There, you have no experience of anything but the now, right? So remember, creation realm represents experience. So I cannot experience something that I visualize in the future, no more than I can experience something that's in the past. Even if I am thinking about something in the future or the past, I'm thinking, reflecting, and pondering on it in the present moment. So that is how we can see. These are all correspondences, guys. Heaven would represent Father, because the nature of the energy is expressive, it emanates and gives of its essence to the earth, right? So earth is the mother principle. It takes and receives and it processes those resources in order to give birth to the child, which is the creation realm, right? So in terms of our studies, right? So you have heaven is learning. If you think about it, you go to a lecture, someone is speaking to you, you are the receptive, right? So there's either the speaking, or if you're reading, it's the book itself, the material that you're studying. You are learning, you are being influenced by the information. Then there's a period of understanding, which is the earth, right? So there's consuming the material, then there's the understanding of the material. And once that's been understood, then you can go out and apply that knowledge to do something, right? And that is related to the creation realm. Same thing here. So we have the idea of something, right? So there's an inspired idea. In the earth realm here, it would be making a plan. It's the same thing as understanding, or to process, or to process the resources of heaven. Here, what we're doing is there was an idea that was inspired. We're creating a plan. And then there's the end product of that plan, right? So there's the thing that we can execute, or the thing that we can create based on the plan. It's the end result, right? Look at food, right? So in heaven, heaven is the ingredients. It's the resources, right? So ingredients are resources for the meal, but not the meal itself. To be able to make the meal, I take those resources and then I take it through a process we call cooking. And in that process, it goes through transformation and it becomes the meal, right? So as you can see, you're already starting to see how this can be a very logical process of understanding what constantly is happening day in and day out in front of your faces, right? Once again, heaven realm, we're looking at influence. Um, so here, if I were to put this into the context of something like astrological magic, or just magic in general, right? So there's the invocation of the influence. That's the heaven portion. Then there's the object that I am trying to direct that influence to. Maybe I'm trying to empower a talisman, or maybe I'm trying to cleanse a space, right? And then there's the effect. The effect is, has to be in harmony, right? So the influence of what I'm drawing in has to correspond harmoniously with the object that's meant to contain that influence, so that it can exert the intended effect, right? So if I have things of conflicting nature, then the effect will not turn out the way I intend, right? So this is important, because this is an overall process. It goes from heaven to earth to creation. If you're finding difficulty in being able to manifest a certain outcome, then you have a very clear way of analyzing generally where there is a mix-up, right? So perhaps you lack a complete idea, or there's not enough learning, there's not enough information. In that case, it's heaven. Or there's an incorrect understanding of the information, or your plan is not well thought out, or there's not enough skill in the application of your or not there's not enough skill in your ability to translate the information into something functional, right? So then the outcome, right, the end product is going to be skewed, right? So if you try to do things and they don't turn out as you intend, this can be used as a model to see where there's a break in the process, right? So that's just a very basic and very practical way of applying it, but this also gets very deep and heavy into other things. So here, heaven also relates to the mind, right? So the mind, as far as what is um, what corresponds to heaven, because it is what works with imagery, right? So what we see, what we think, which are also images internally in the mind, our ability to recognize and become inspired and to learn from our environment. The earth in this case would represent the body, which is the reception of the sensations of our experiences, and then the outcome is behavior. So we have to see that this is where we start to look at long-term behaviors, right? If I were to have an association, something happens, right? I have a friend, a person, a family member, someone that I really care about. They come up and they may put their arm around me, and it's just an endearing act of physical affection. If there's a positive association, which is purely of the mind, and the sensation is not causing too much pain, which is in the body, then the resulting behavior will be a positive one, right? So in other words, I won't feel threatened. I won't feel like I'm being attacked. There's a positive association. And so the way I'm going to act, my body language is going to express receptivity, kindness, reciprocity. Now, it could be the exact same stimulus, which is in the body, but at heaven, the mind may have a completely different association. Now, I'm at a bank and some random person that I don't know, that doesn't really smell so nice and doesn't look like they've been able to shower in quite some time, put their arm around me and starts to speak. Now, for as altruistic as we may want to claim, in many situations, if that's something that someone does uninvited and randomly, you're probably going to feel uncomfortable. Most people would feel uncomfortable. It's the same stimulus, it's the same action. The body felt all the same things from a physical standpoint, but because there's an incongruent mental association with the stimulus, your resulting behavior is going to be very different, right? Okay, so now on a larger scale, now heaven represents spirit, and here we're referring, so yes, there's the spirit realm, which is this greater realm, but now here there's, when we refer to spirit, there's this collective of energy, and this collective of inspiration, this collective of initiation, right? Then there's the soul. The soul is the archetype of our own form. And then there's the physical body, right? So these are the three aspects, and you'll see a lot of reference to these things in different ways, especially in alchemical traditions, whether it's Eastern or Western. So in the Western tradition, you'll see salt, mercury, and sulfur, and understanding that what they're referring to is a stylized or an allegorical model of the three aspects of anything. So a good example is with plant alchemy. In plant alchemy, salt refers to the burnt down ashes of the plant material itself that no longer ignites, right? So that aspect that is of the body is the salt. Then you distill from that the essence of the plant. And the essence of the plant, a lot of times, is what can be used in a lot of, that carries the qualities of the plant. It could be used medicinally, it could be used for tinctures and different types of useful either medicines or potions and tinctures that can be used to alter the mind as well. And then there's the ethyl alcohol, which would be representative of the spirit, because all plants, when they break down, give off ethyl alcohol. And as you might as well know, There are a lot of plant alcohols, right? Like, so you have wines and spirits, right? So this is what we see as well. All of this is used in alchemy, and Eastern alchemy is the same in that regard. They just refer to them with different terms, right? So now, in terms of the practice of more of the mystery traditions, heaven refers to the celestials, earth refers to the ancestors, and in the creation realm, it's the elementals and nature spirits. So when you start to see traditions that are of ancestor worship, a lot of the old world traditions, like a lot of the African traditions, are ancestor worship traditions. Some of the Eastern traditions are also ancestor worship traditions, whereas the celestials are more about the gods and goddesses. A lot of times there is an astrological component, whether or not it's recognized by the tradition. It can actually be, um, if you know anything about the magical backgrounds of astrology, it's relatively easy to see, and it's pretty clear, but it's there. And then the elementals. So when you start to look at certain things of the um, certain pagan religions, which are really just older traditions, they would work a lot with different natural elements, natural materials. You would have your stones, you would have your herbs, you would have all of these things. It's using the energies that are in creation to correspond to other things, right? But there's also just working with the energy that's in the elemental expressions of nature itself, right? So all of them are parts of a whole, and that's important to understand because we want to, with a better understanding of the big picture, we start to see the parts and the whole. And that's really the call of the mysteries, is to get the big picture, right? Because we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? In all of its entirety, as a whole, as well as its parts.